All right, welcome back. We are Game 2007. That's Multiplayer Game Design 1 in the winter 2026 at Georgia, and it's week 1, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. Last part, we talked about a bunch of stuff related to multiplayer games. This part, we're going to be more practical, and I'm going to skip down to this part where it says, not that one, this one, which is like, let's make a split screen in Unreal. So what I want to do with this one is I want to start a new project next week. And again, a reminder, please, for all the stuff we're doing together, I would kindly ask you guys to join groups as soon as possible. If you haven't had a chance to do that, it'll save us a lot of time. Let me just do this now. But what I want to do now is I just want to start off with Unreal Engine. And I want to open up a third-person perspective project, please. Okay, let's get to it. So here's something I want to talk about. I want to use this as just an example of how quirky multiplayer can be, right? And I also want to explore a very common way of doing multiplayer, which is couch co-op, split screen, right? So it's common because it's cheap. Okay, you don't have to have any server at all, and you can have 2 players playing at the same time, right, or more. And I know that, was it Connor or Josh that showed you guys Prime Ops? That was couch co-op, right? So there wasn't a split screen, though, for that one. All right, so let's do this thing. I'm just going to call this project. I will put this project up on DevOps, so I'm going to start off naming this thing what it should be, which is, again, it's going to be Game 2007, and we're just going to call this split screen. I know it doesn't like my dashes. I'll take them away in a second. So it doesn't like dashes when you make your name. So I'm just going to do one of these. So we know what it is, right? And it's too long, so we'll just go SS. How about that? Split screen for SS, okay? So we know what it is and all that stuff. I'm going to make this thing. It's going to go into Unreal projects. I'm also checking on starter content. We may need it later on. Actually, you know what? We won't need it. Let's uncheck starter content just to save some generation. You can always remove it too if you don't want it. So what I want to do with this one is I want to remind you guys of a couple things, and I want you to, at any time when you think that it would be best to use C++, I want you to raise your hand. All right, not yet. Okay, but when we're actually coding this stuff, we're actually doing it, I want you to think about it and say, huh, I probably should be using C++ there. And I'm going to ask this question again tomorrow. Yes?
How wrong would it be for somebody to just hold their hand up the entire time?
Nothing wrong. But I mean, it's just, I understand. Some people don't like the blueprint stuff, right? But there are some things you can do with blueprints that is, you know, there's a lot of overhead to use C++ because you have to make a C++ project, you have to do all those things, you have to compile. There's a lot of stuff. If you want to prototype really quickly, blueprints are your friend, right? If you're not really a great programmer, you want artists to kind of combine in there and help you out, blueprints. I think, honestly, like I said to you guys before, I think if you learned Unreal Engine instead of Unity from the very first year, right, I think your games would have been much different than they were, right? And not because I don't like Unity. I like Unity a lot, actually. But I find that the complexity of using C# when you're first learning about putting together games, you don't have to code at all with this stuff, right? Like you literally can just create with Unreal Engine. And there is a 2D, like you can use like Paper 2D with Unreal Engine 2, so you don't have to make it just with Unity. I just think Unity is easier to make 2D stuff. So what you want to do, let's make sure that your stuff is here. I see you're having issues. Just try to launch it first one. Okay, what happened?
I had it open earlier. So
let's see, maybe we want to go to your little cloud at the bottom there. Like that one. Just launch it there. It's right here. And then little to the left. Okay. Yeah, anyway. So what you can do is stop it. launch it. But you still may have to run it in different ways. So I gave you guys the blueprint, but here's how it's going to be. Split screen is actually super easy to set up. Okay? The problem is not setting up split screen. The problem is all the extra crap you have to do to do a couple things that we're going to talk about, right? So I've put some stuff in the PowerPoint slide deck to get us going, but there's going to be a couple of asks today that are not in the PowerPoint to challenge you. Okay? So I want to see if you can do these things, right? And this is part of what we're doing today. So I want to, see how you're doing and see if you're able to do what I'm asking you to do. It's also a bit of a review from last semester. Hopefully you guys can do it pretty quick. Andrew's like flying through it already. I can see him doing it. Here we are. So, step one. You play your game and make sure it works. How about that? That's the first step. And this is our regular thing. We have Quinn, which is our mannequin, and she's running around and doing her thing. Yay! But we want to make this so that we are going to do split screen. So the first thing you do is split screen. You're going to go into Edit, Project Settings. Let's go there. And under Project Settings, what you're going to do is you're going to go to Maps and Modes. And on the bottom, there's some options here for local multiplayer. Now, we're going to talk about topology, network topology next week. But I want you to think about this as like multiple players playing on the same computer with no network, okay? So here, a very common way of doing split screen is like top and bottom. That's horizontal. I remember Gears of War did it that way, for Xbox and for other things like that. I'm not sure. I'm not a fan of top and bottom split screen. I like left and right split screen more. I'm just telling you. I'm being honest. I know. Even like things like, I know you're laughing at me, but even Mario Kart, I'm telling you right now, I prefer left and right split screen compared to like top and bottom. That's just me,
I
right?
would take the more restricted left and right because then I can keep my eyes parallel.
Depends on the
right?
game.
As opposed to having to look
Because I
up
know
and
some
down.
games, if they do the top and bottom,
Yeah.
they like to squish.
Yeah,
things.
yeah. And so I'm going to choose.
I don't know if current Call of Duty does that, but old, like the original Black Ops would do that if you did vertical split.
Yeah, yeah.
It would squish.
It squishes things up and change the aspect ratio. Let's go here. I'm going to do vertical. You don't have to. I'm choosing vertical because that's what I like. Please also check where it says skip assigning gamepad to player one. Please check this one, okay? And then that's the first setting. Also, because I'm starting a new project, I'm going to go to Editor Preferences and make sure that it starts off in my main window because I don't want any of that stuff to happen. So that's number 2. And the next part is when we look at our third-person perspective project and we want to think about setting things up a little bit, okay? So if I look at my blueprints and if I look at my third-person perspective blueprint, there's a couple of differences that we have here compared to when we made it together. What we did was we used something called the event begin play, but you can see here that it's using event receive controller changed. So when the controller changes, then after that's done, it remaps everything. Okay, it's not a bad way of doing things, but what we want to do is we want to move this or something like it into our own player controller. So let's make a new player controller first. So here I'm going to go to third person perspective. In this same folder, I'm going to right click. I'll make a new blueprint class, and I'm going to use a player controller blueprint. That's what I'm going to make here. And I'm going to call this BP underscore third person, and then underscore after that, and it's going to be called player controller. Big name, but that's okay. And now that I have that blueprint, I'm going to go right into my event graph, and this is where I want my stuff to be. Now, I've got some special stuff in there that I did differently, which is instead of using the stuff that I have in my other stuff, I'm going to do this. I'm going to use is local controller. Now, let me explain what this is. That means, do I have is it like, am I doing local multiplayer? That's what this is checking, okay? So it's key that you put this in. So it's more like an if check that you're doing, right? You're saying is local controller, right? And then if that's true, so we're going to branch. Let's do a branch. And then if that's true, then what we're going to do next. Well, remember last time what we had to do was, because we had a player controller, we would cast from a controller to a player controller. But this is a player controller, so we should just be able to say something like local or enhanced local or player local subsystem, whatever the thing is, right? Get enhanced input worlds, enhanced input local player subsystem. Here it is. And notice that that's what it looks like. Enhanced input local player subsystem, right? So once we have that, once we have this, then we can do it, add mapping context, which is what we would normally do. And then here you're going to pick the only mapping context in town, which is the IMC default, right? And from there, I'm just going to drag a line like this. What this does is it makes it so that every player controller, because whenever you create another player, it creates a separate player controller for that player. And so every player controller has its own mapping context. If you don't do this, then both player controllers are going to use the same mapping context, which that doesn't work. You need to have a separate mapping context for each player. That's why you need to do it here in the player controller. I think it's the proper place to do it. So that's number one. So once you've done this, right, however you do it. Now, one thing also I've added in is a delay. And I'll tell you why. Because one thing we didn't talk about last semester was, what's a delay of 0.0 do? And when you say delay of 0, it actually does a delay of 1 frame. Okay? So this is something to note. You don't have to do a delay of 0.2, right? You don't have to do that. 0.0 is like 1 frame delay, and it's enough time where things are set up, and then you can map stuff out. That's why I'm doing it this way, okay? So that's the first thing you want to do here. So there you go. Okay, so now that we have our third-person perspective player controller, we need to map this with our third-person game mode. So let's pull up our game mode now. And notice the game mode here, it has a player controller class. It's a default player controller that it comes with. I want you to map in our BP underscore third-person player controller, the one we just made, okay? So what this does, it'll use our player controller instead of the one that is the default. Next, what we want to do is we want to create our local player, but we want to do something new, which is switch has authority. Okay, let's do that. So again, we want to go to the event begin play. And when we create our event begin play, we're going to actually type in switch has authority. Switch has authority, right? So why is this good? I could say has authority, yes or no, and then do a branch. This is kind of the same, right? So authority, what it basically says is that this is running on the server or the main machine. You know, if the switch has authority, then what do we want to do? We want to create a local player. So create local player. And we want to make it so that the local player's number is 1. Because the default local player, the number is 0. There you go. So once we've done this, my friends, just this, these changes, compile and save. And if we run our game, we got split screen. It's that fast. Okay? It's not that difficult to make. However, there's some changes we have to make. Notice it says access none, trying to read property, call function, blah, blah, blah. Right? Why? Because we haven't taken away our third-person perspective stuff over here. Let's take this away. We don't need this anymore. Right? So that's gone. We don't have to map it twice. Okay? So compile and save. That's number one. The other thing is I want to give my player, my second player, another place to start. So we have this player start right here. What we can do is we can duplicate this, Alt-drag, so that there's at least 2, right? So now there's 2 places they can start. If we press play now, then we'll see that both players are apart, right? And if you can't move, like I can't move, right? Something is wrong. I've made a mistake, right? It tells me something. It says access none, trying to read property of call function in get local player subsystem from player controller. Why? Because in my version of the blueprint that I made, I had a different node than this one. So I have a newer version. I'm just going to go to that right now. So that is in my player controller. I'm just going to go to that player controller that's made, this one. Notice there's nothing here. It should be self. Right? If you don't have that, then bad things happen. Now, if you can pull up a node that is enhanced, if you pull up enhanced input subsystem, right? Enhanced input subsystem, which I cannot pull in. Right, here's a get enhanced world system, right? And here's two. There's get enhanced input player local subsystem, and there's also this one. So when I pull that in, notice there's one that doesn't have an input. There's two different ones, unfortunately, guys. So let's try this one and see if that solves my problem. If I press play here, now I can move, right? And it stop things up. So if you pulled this one off, then you need to put self. However, there's the other one. If I replace this one with this one, just saying, if I did that and if I press play, then also I can move around and do the things I want to do. What about my other player? How can I play that person? Well, you need one of these right? To start off with. You need a controller. So next week, guys, if you have a controller, please bring it in. All right? Now, there are some things that you need to do if you have a controller like this. I have some controllers in the cabinet as well, but I want to tell you this when it comes to PC. I have a bunch of PS5 controllers in there. All right? PS5 controllers with PC, do they work? Yes, but you need to map them a little differently. It's possible, but they're weird. So Xbox or a Microsoft controller is the way to go. One thing is, for our little machines in front of you, I love them so much, but they do not have Bluetooth at all, right? So I recommend a little dongle like this. It's like 20 bucks from Amazon, right? It gives you Bluetooth, you plug it in, and it works, right? Let me demonstrate. So, and I have some dongles here, if you have a controller, yes? Yes. Yes, if you have a USB-C and you can plug in the plugged-in controller, that's also good. But please try and bring a controller that can plug in at least to play, because we will be doing it. If you're using, at least two inputs, right? Now, we could do things with the same computer using switching from one computer to the other, one thing to the other. But here, if I plug this in, let's see if it works. We may have success. There we go. It lit up. It doesn't take long. It's automatic because it has my stuff in here. Now, my controller needs to be synced up. And I need to go into Bluetooth settings here, like normal. There it is. There's my Bluetooth device. Add a device. I want to do this. And if I did things properly, and I should be able to map, there we go, to my wireless controller, and we're good to go. Okay, very, very simple. And now when we play, my mouse does this, and my controller does that. Okay, that's what it does. And you can see that both controllers can work in tandem, no problem. Okay? Split screen multiplayer in 10 minutes, right? Yeah, I know. Now let's talk about the real stuff, right? So this is a great start. It's a great place to put it up on DevOps when you do something like this, because you've got your first version of multiplayer. So let's do all that stuff. So File, Save All, and I'm just going to close this. Actually, I don't have to close it off, but I could. Oh, what do I have here? Pick an app. So I'm just going to go to I think it's on C, Unreal Projects. Where did I put my thing? Where did I put it? Where? I think it's under Unreal Projects. Apps, no apps. Is it? It's not downloads, is it? Where the hell is it? That's what happens when you make a project random. Let's see if I was to pull up my Epic Games Launcher again, where it goes. That's just me being dumb. Sorry. Documents. It's in the documents. Here it is. All right, so in here. So what I want to do is I want to go and open terminal and do all the things I did last time. Now, brand new computer, image changed. Will I be able to push to DevOps? Probably have to log in is the answer, right? So I'm going to do, oh, and also something else. Do we have a gitignore file? No, right? Because if I actually do a little discovery here, no gitignore file, right? So I need one, right? That's one thing that I could definitely do. I also don't have a git attributes file. I don't have those two. So we need those two files. Where do I get this stuff from? Nope, that will not give me a git attributes file. I need to have a gitignore file first. Yes?
Doesn't Unreal have the option to give you gitignore file that you can remove it later?
It does, but you can actually look it up. If I say something like gitignore Unreal Engine, right? Then a lot of times what you might find is a gitignore file like this. I literally just went gitignore Unreal Engine, and all you need to do is make an empty file with all this stuff in it, right? So if you do that, if I just copy all that and go back to my file explorer and right click and have a new file that is a txt file, let's say a text file. I'm going to call this a gitignore file. There's other ways of doing this too. And if I double click onto it and I just paste stuff in there, then we have a gitignore file of some use. There we go. So that's one. Now the git attributes file has to be added in, like you said, through, you can add it in through here. So if we did do a git init, and before we do a git add dot, what we don't want to do is git lfs. If I just type that in, it'll say what you have to do, git lfs install, because if you haven't done that for the first time, by the way, you'll be in the same boat as me because we've re-imaged all these machines in front of you, right? So unless you're using a machine of your own, right? And so then once you've got your git lfs install, then what you want to do is you want to do a git lfs track and then star dot u asset, so any assets, you want to track those. And you also want to do it git lfs track star dot umap and anything else that you might think. Those are the main things that you need. Once you've done that, then what it does is it creates a gitignore file or git attributes file. Git attributes are the things that you need for git large file support. And then from there, you can do a git add dot. Why? Because you don't want to do a git add dot without a gitignore file and a git attributes file. If you do, it's just not going to work. It's never going to go to DevOps, right? Git commit -m, and we'll say initial commit. Right, there we go. Create mode. That's good. And then what I want to do now is I want to create that project in DevOps. So again, I'm going to go here, go to college. For me, I'm going to go, I've just bookmarked it to DevOps. It may ask me to log in because I'm here for the first time. And then we have a folder that I'm using for this class and for the other classes. This one's called GAME2007. It's on your Blackboard. So if somehow you can't pull off what I did, that's okay. You can always look here and see what I did. All right, so here's my default. I want to make a brand new repository, and I'm going to call this the same thing, something like Game 2007 in the winter 2026. And it's week 1. That's kind of what we did. No README file, and click create. You've done this a bunch of times, guys, so there's no need for me to go into too much of this. Oh, one thing I need to do is git branch capital -m main, and then right click, and then what it'll do is it'll ask me to log in if I did everything properly. Or not. It's just doing. And there we go. So if you have problems with this project and you want to kind of look at mine and compare mine to yours, here we are. So this is the first part. Next, now that we've done this, here's the challenge. I've given you, the first challenge is the one that's in the PowerPoint. I want to add in a widget so it shows the player number on top of their head. Okay? Now here's the tricks to this, the details for this one, right? Each player should see the other player's number and their own. And it should billboard to the player. Okay? Do you guys know what billboarding is? What's that? Yeah, so what billboarding is, actually we use it for grass. If you ever think about it. So you actually draw, a bunch of grass on like foliage like we're gonna do. The grass actually billboards to the player. It actually moves. So it kind of, the grass plane looks at you all the time, believe it or not, right? And why? Because grass is actually just a plane. That's all it is. And it's got certain transparency. So a bunch of little like, basically rectangles. That's all they are, right? And then what happens is it billboards to you so you actually see the grass. So we're gonna do the same thing with our thing. The first thing we need to do is make a widget. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. I'm gonna go to content here. I'm making a new folder, and let's make a UI folder. Inside the UI folder, I'm gonna make a brand new user interface, which is gonna be a widget blueprint. I'm gonna choose user widget. I'm gonna call this WBP player ID. Okay, there it is. Here's the player ID, and in here I want to add in a canvas component. Here's the canvas component right in there, and in the canvas component I want to put in a text box, which is this, somewhere in the middle. And let's use the center anchor, and we'll make it so that it's zeroed out. We'll also use alignment that's 0.5 and 0.5. These are all things we did last semester. And you know what? I want to change this so that it shows a big 9, because that's a good number to look at, 9. And then in the font, I'm going to change the font size to 60, so it's quite big. And I'm also going to choose, because I want this to size to content so that it's going to be kind of show properly. So it's going to look like this, 9. 9! The mighty 9. Anyone watch that?
Yes.
I like it. I like it more than Critical Role, if you're into that kind of thing. The other one that they had, the Vox Machina. Yeah. I think it's a better version of the Critical Role version that they had.
Works better actually as a show than the headline.
I think so too. So once you have this widget blueprint, this is what I want to show on top of the player, right? I want to be able to show this on top of the player's head, right? Now the problem that I have with showing it on top of the player's head is there's two ways to do this. I could do it as a text render, and I could do it as a widget blueprint, right? So let's do it this way. So first of all, we've added a widget blueprint. Yay. Let's save all. I want to go back to the third person player. Let's just close all this off. I don't need it anymore. So back to this. And there's two ways to do this. If I type in text, right? So I want to add in text, not here. I want to add in text. I could do it this way, right? Which is a text render. That's the way of doing it, right? And a text render, all it's going to show is text. I find that there's more control by using a widget blueprint. So instead of doing it this way, I want to add in a widget. So if you type in widget, that's what you can do. If I click the widget itself, then I have a widget. Let's call this, something like, I think I made names for it. Let me just make sure. Player ID owner, if I'm not sure. There's two. So what I did was I kind of made, I'll come back to this. Player ID owner, player ID other P0, and player ID other P1. But for now, let's just do player ID owner, and I'll show you this one. All right, so player ID, and we're going to call this owner. There we go. So player ID owner is a widget component. Inside of it, there are some options here on the right. One of them is the space. You can choose world space. or you can choose screen space. Those are the two options. You know what the difference between world space and screen space is by this point, I'm hoping. And the widget class that we're going to pull is WBP player ID, the one we just made. What you're going to see in the viewport, because we've chosen by default we're choosing to do world space, we can put the number, kind of position it something like negative or 130 is what the number I'm seeing, something like this. And if I was to play this game now, right, then what you're going to see is, well, this. Notice that I can't see it. Now I can, right? And the same thing goes with my other controller. If I move around, you can see that there is the actual number here as well, right? But this is no good. We want this thing to billboard. Well, there's two easy ways to do this. If you want it to billboard naturally, change it to screen space. It automatically billboards to you right away. So if I go back to the player third-person controller, and if I go to the player ID owner, and if I change from world space to screen space, and if I press play now, you'll see that it automatically billboards like this. It's not right yet because, it says 9, right? It should say the number of the player, right? But we're going to get there. And it only billboards for the player. If I look at my other player here, where are they? Oh, they're over here. Notice that it doesn't exist over here, right? And they can't see mine. They can only see their number. Woohoo, right? So my challenge is I want to be able to see their number. I want them to see my number over my head because this is how it's going to be done, right? Well, we have to, jump through a few hoops to get that done. And I've given you some ways of doing it in our PowerPoint. So I'm going to back up a bit. Inside the widget blueprint itself, I want to create a little function named setPlayerIDText, this one, setPlayerIDText. So in the widget blueprint, that's inside of UI, back in here, I'm going to go to my graph. By the way, one thing that I also did is this text, I named it something. So what I did was I named it text player ID. That's the name that I gave it. So here I didn't do that. So we can rename that to that, text player ID, and make it is variable, right? And then if I go to my graph and I make a new function, that's where I want to go next. Here we are. I want this new function to be called setPlayerIDText. Now that's my name, but you may not agree with it. I don't know, doesn't matter. But all this thing is going to do, this setPlayerIDText, is going to take two things. It's going to take a player ID that's an integer. So I need to have an input. On the left here, you can add an input, if you remember. Player ID, and we're going to make it so that it is an integer. That's the input. And then from that player ID, what I want to do is I also want to get the text player ID here. And I want to set text, there it is. And what I want to do is I want to say player ID like this, which is get player ID. And notice that Unreal Engine 5.54 gives you this little F that says that this is a function parameter. And I just want to connect it to that in text like this. When I do that, it allows me to change the text that I'm showing there from 9 to something else, which is what I'm going to do. So this is the first thing, first step. I added this function. Are you with me? I know I've got it all in the PowerPoint, but the challenge is making the numbers work, my friends. All right. Wonderful. I can change this. I can throw this down now. All right. Now, next step. I want to add in a couple more. Let me tell you why. I want to talk about billboarding. It's going to be done with the tick function, right? But here's what I want to do. All right. So listen for a second so you understand what I want to do. All right. I'm the main player. Logan, stand for a second. Come over here. Come. And Logan is the other player, right? I'm player 0, he's player 1. I have a thing over my head, and I want to see the thing over his head, right? So that means I'm going to have two things over my head. The thing that I can see, my camera can see, is up here. Logan's going to have one that's up here, right, as an example. I'm going to be seeing his, and his, the one I want to see, is billboarding towards me, my camera. Mine is going to show him to me, plus I have another one that's going to billboard towards him, so you can see his. Plus, he's going to have his own. So there's 3 that I need. Thank you. I need 3. That's insane. And if you try this out any other way, I challenge you, try it out with less than 3. Try it with 2. Try it with 1. Right? It just doesn't work properly. I've worked this thing out, this problem, over the last little bit, and you just need 3. So here's what I want to do. I want to have 2 more. Player ID other for player 0 for pawn 0. That's what this means. It's going to be world space instead of screen space, because we want it to billboard, like I said, right? We can't billboard with screen space the same way. So again, what I want to do is I want to duplicate what I have. So I'm going to right click and click duplicate, right? And we're just going to replace it with this. Now, even though I've duplicated, what I want to do is I want to change it from screen space to world space. That's kind of an important thing to do, so you can see it, right? And then I'm going to duplicate it again. Duplicate. Just like on Invincible. And notice now that I have 2. I have P0 and P1, and then I have owner. Owner means it's going to stay as screen space, but P0 and P1, they're going to be world space. Okay? All right, cool. Compile and save. So now what we're going to do is if we run this thing, you'll see that we're going to have 9s, right? And there's a bunch of 9s. Look at this one. Look what happens here. I got this, and I got this other one, right? And there's actually 2 more. And if I run in front of the player over here, he's going to see some stuff, but not everything, because unless I face him like this, he won't see it. He won't see it at all. Oops, there we go. And just want to do one of these. And you can see now we can start seeing things. There's 2 cameras, right? For every player, there's an extra player controller, and there's an extra camera, right? So now we've duplicated everything. I have 2 cameras, 2 player controllers, and we have 6 of these text objects, 3 of them over my head, 1 looking at me, 1 looking at them, and 1 looking at my camera. Crazy, right? All right, very, very good. So now that I've got these things, well, we need to be able to name them, right? So what I want to do is I've created this funky ass function that we're going to make in a second. And I'm going to call it display player ID. And it's going to be inside of our 3rd-person character blueprint. So inside here, I'm going to make this new thing. And we're going to name it that. Display player ID. Okay, here it is in all of its glory. The first thing that I want to do is I want to get the controller, right? And I'm going to cast it as a player controller. So get controller. And I'm going to cast as player controller. Cast to player controller. That's the first thing I want to do. If it succeeds, and it will, that means when this is called, I'm going to have a player controller, the player controller that this thing is part of. Now remember, I've just created 2 characters. I have the first one and then the second one. Each one of them have their own player controller. The first one is player controller 0. The second one is player controller 1. Okay? That's how we're doing it. Next, what I want to do is I want to get local player controller ID. So from here, so get local player controller ID. There we are. Okay? So this gives us the number. This is like number 0 or number 1 or whatever it's going to be. Then I want to use the sequence node. With my sequence node. Okay? And I want to do it in a couple ways. Now there's 3 sequences here. 1, 2, 3. Why? 1 for each of those things that we're doing. And it's going to be some duplication here. Could I have made a little function here? I could have. I just decided not to. All right, for this, because we're only doing it, so it's kind of like a little throwaway app that we're making. But I wanted to kind of do this. So the first thing is the player ID owner, and I want to get the widget from it. So each object, because this is this thing is a widget component. If I drag it in, right, it's not the widget, it's the widget component. Think about it as the container for the widget. So we have to get the widget from it. Get widget. That's the first thing. So once we have access to the widget, it's just a generic widget. We need to cast to WBP player ID. So cast to WBP player ID. There it is. And we can connect it up. There we go. But yes, I could have definitely made a function here. I just didn't do it. And then I want to get that player controller ID. And what I want to do is this player controller that I got here, right here, instead of me recreating it over and over again, right here, this player controller ID, and dragging it all over the place, I'm going to promote it as a variable on the, as a global variable, not a local variable. So it's going to be right click here, and I want to promote the variable, and I want to call this player controller ID. That's promoted as a variable in the blueprint variable. There we go. And then I can just use that player controller ID to set. So here is the actual thing, right? So I'm going to say here, let's get the set player ID text. Remember, that's the function that I used, set player ID text. And then I can get the player controller ID, and I can use that to set the text. So this will be for me, for my owner, player ID owner, right? But I have two more, right? I have player ID P0, the other P0, and player ID P1, right? So I want to get those two. So I want to do the same thing. So I'm going to copy this whole thing for now. And again, we can make this more efficient. If you want to make it more efficient, you can. But this is just an example. So I'm going to grab this, get rid of that, and drop in this. And I'll copy that again, copy paste, copy pasta, and just get rid of this, and use player P1, put that in there, and connect it up to the sequence node. And make it a little nicer than this, because it's pretty ugly. There we go. So what this little function does is it does all our naming for us. This is all the stuff that actually names our sets our number. That's what we're going to do here. All right, so compile and save. We don't need this anymore. So now that we have that, now that we have this, what we want to do is in the event graph, there is a new event that I want to share with you, which is event possessed. Okay, event possessed. That is when a character controller is possessed, right? And I mean that like it becomes active, if you will, right? So, or the pawn is possessed. Think of it that way. Remember, we can possess pawns and we can possess characters. Those are the two things we can possess, right? So event possessed is what I want to do here. Event possessed, there it is. And up in the event possessed, what I want to do here is, the first thing I want to do is display my player ID. Let's just try that. Let's see what happens if I just call this display player ID here. Here we go. And I also want to do the same thing by default on begin play. Event begin play, here it is. Let's also call this same function here on event begin play. Okay, I want to talk about why. So event possess happens before event begin play. But remember that event possess happens for both character controllers are instantiated into the world at different times. The way we did it. The first one happens by default. That's the main, because it happens because of the game mode. The game mode instantiates player 0. That's what it does. And then the game mode in the event begin play instantiates player 2, or player 1 is what it's going to be, right? And because of that difference in time, we need to do them at different times, right? Right there. So if I do that, just this, and if I press play, you're going to see we're going to get some numbers like this. So we're going to get the billboarding happening, but if I look at my friend, I don't see his number unless I go over here, right? So it's not billboarding. And he doesn't see my number unless I'm in front of him, like this, right? So we're getting there, right? But we're not quite there yet. Okay. So that's this. That's just player ID. Now, here's the stuff we're going to do. If my player controller ID is equal to 0, that's the first thing we're going to do. So this is some checks. We're going to say, okay, well, if my player controller ID, which is this, we just save this thing. If this get is equal to 0, that means it's player controller 0. Okay, that means the first player controller. If that's the case, branch. Okay. Put your hand up if you think it's better to do C++. I think so. At this point, I'm like, where's my C++? This would be perfect for C++ right here. This if statement right here, which sucks to do in blueprints. My player ID other P0 and my player ID, I want to set the visibility on these two things in different ways, right? So let's pull them in. So player ID P0, and I want to do player ID P1, those two things. And I want to set the visibility differently. So I want to set visibility on one and the other. So here's the first one. So if it's true, I want to set the visibility. I'm going to set the visibility. And what I want to do is, let's puzzle this up for a second. If the player ID on P0, if it's 0, then I want to not show the visibility. But if it's P1, I do want to have the visibility. I want to show P1 but hide P0 from myself. Let me go through this again. If I'm player 0, I want to hide my own thing that's on top of my head for myself, but I want to show the other one that's on top of their head. Okay? That's what I want. However, if this is false, let's reverse that. If this is false, then I want to do it the other way around. I want to show my visibility and hide the other one. Show and hide. And that's what this is. That's what this little map is. Okay? So now let's try it out and see what happens. So if I press play, you can see I'm good. And I want to run around. And you see that that's pretty good. I can see them, right? But it's not billboarding yet. All right. Very good. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're halfway there. Okay? Actually, more than halfway now. Next, I want to go to my event tick. And this is the last part that I want to do. And this looks big, but actually there's some duplication here too. So there is no event tick. So I'm going to type, if I type in event tick, you're going to see that it's going to put it right there. That's not where I want it. I want to put this somewhere else, like maybe way down here. And what I want to do here is add a sequence node right away. There we go. And the first part, the first part that I want to do is I want to get player controller 0. So if you type in get player controller, right, it gives you numbers here, 0, 1, whatever. Well, this is the first one. And this is really low kind of tech here. Player controller 0, good. All right, and I want to get the camera manager from this thing. So get camera manager, get player camera manager. There we go. Get player camera manager. And the camera manager has a location. So get camera location. So this is what the camera is, where the camera is. There's actually a physical camera or a virtual camera in the scene. I also want to use the player ID P0, this one. And I want to get the world location, get location. So get world location of the actual widget, because this is in world space. Once I have the widget's location and the camera's location, I can use the find look at rotation node. So find look at rotation, with the start is the widget and the end is the player's camera. And once I've done that, I can use this to use my player ID other P0, this one, and set the rotation for this widget. Set rotation. There it is. And I want to use this value. And now, this is happening every frame because we're in the tick function. This is like your update function in Unity, remember? Put that way up here. Now that we have this, that is for the first one. And we want to do the same thing for the second one. So I'm just going to copy paste and change the relevant things. Now again, I could have made a little function for this to save time, right? Or I can use a loop. That's another thing I could have done here. Because really, this is just looping. I can just increment the player number from 0 to 1, right? So I can add 1 to it. Okay? So I could have looped it one more time. So here, Instead of player controller 0, it's player controller 1. We're being very specific, not really scalable, right? And what I want to do is I want to put player 1 in there, and the 1 for player 1 over there. And then I want to just connect it up to my second sequence. And with that change, if we did everything correctly, and maybe I didn't, we should be able to find almost everything working. So, except when it comes to this. See that? That's weird, right? Some kind of weird stuff. Okay? But it's much better because now I can see their number and they can see my number. They can see my number and I can see their number. Yay. Here's something I want to do. I want to hide the extra information. Let me explain. Each widget has more than one thing to do. If I take this widget here, this player owner, there is, if you type in owner here, on the bottom there is a rendering that says owner, only owner C, right? So only owner C, the one that is billboarding. I don't want anyone to see that, just me. So let's check that on, right? And what that does, that's the owner one. If I press play, then you can see that they won't be able to see my number, the billboard, but they can see the other one. Okay, that's number 1. But now I want the other two to be owner no C. So I want owner no C for those two. Let's see if that works. So if I press play, then we should be able to not see anything else, but they should be able to see me. And there you go, my friends, billboarding. Yeah. Now, you might think this is totally easy, and I'm happy if you think that that's true, right? But that's a lot of work for one little user interface item put up there. Challenge for you guys. Change the color of the material for player 0 and player 1. Player 0 should be green, player 1 should be red. Do it. All right, and it should be visible to both the player and the other player. Go. All right, I want you to do that. That's your challenge for today before you go. Get her done. But the good thing is, at this point, I can run around, right? And I can see them, and if I look over there, they can see me, right? And we can see which ones they are. This is a great way to identify things, and this is a debug if you think about anything else. I've just created a little bit of debugging. It can turn this on and off, but I can identify different players maybe with a button. I press a button and I can see all the players right on the scene. Let's put this up on DevOps. So File, Save All. And I'm going to go back to my little thing here. I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added or completed split screen with player ID. There we go. Some tricks. Some people think when you do split screen, you should change your field of view, right? So right now, for example, my field of view, especially on like what you're seeing there, which is like horizontal, is quite stretched. Like we've just talked about that. You may want to change your field of view so it's not what it is right there. Like reduce your field of view. Okay, and that's in the camera that you can reduce. Field of view should go down, right? Especially if you're going to do the side. I find that the side-by-side split screen, you don't have that problem. It looks pretty good. Do you know what I'm saying? It's when I do, you know, the top and bottom split screen, the horizontal split screen. So if I was to show you that, we can always switch to that. So if I go to player project settings, and if I go to maps and modes, and I can quickly switch just so you can see that, right, what that looks like. And I'm just going to make this a little smaller here so you can see it better. So if I do that, you can see that there is a bit of an issue, right? It's a bit skewed, especially the bottom one. Look at that bottom one, right? Like right here. So he looks okay, but way out there on the edges, look how weird and skewed that looks like on the edge, right? So field of view should probably go down a bit, right? Look at that. So that looks okay, but once I go to the edge here like this, field of view is like really stretched, right, on the edges, right? And I'm not quite happy with that. It looks better when I'm closer, but when I'm farther away, it's like, it's weird, right? So I don't like that too much. That's why, you know, you'd have to change your field of view. So that's like challenge number 2 for you. So, learnings, thoughts around this process. You guys, one thing that you're challenged to do in your games is multiplayer, right? Couch co-op counts. So if you wanted to do this is enough. You can get this done as long as you can make it work and look good, you're good. This is a great way, this is actually really good for level up. There's no network, all right? You don't need Wi-Fi. And this works perfectly fine with level up, right? Yes?
Is there Wi-Fi at Level Up?
No. You're not going to get any Wi-Fi, and you're going to have like zero in there unless like they give you something. So, and it's pretty poor in there because now you're 5,000 people with phones in that same little area trying to, you know, eat the Wi-Fi. So the answer is probably not good, right? So they can set up LANs in there if we ask them to. Like if you want a multiplayer, you know, kind of scenario, you could set that up. But if you need something that's really quick and it's part of your requirements, couch co-op. Okay, so this is I'm giving you the blueprint that you could use for your games today, like in Level Up and Rise. Okay, it is viable, it's pretty good, and it's pretty fun. Okay, the only difference is you're going to have to think about duplication. Okay. What one person sees and the other person sees. Look, I've created 3 user interfaces, right? Because I want to billboard one thing and another thing. Now, if I only care about me seeing stuff, like let's say an inventory system, it's no problem. I just make it so it's screen space and then only the player sees the inventory system. But once you want to try and show weird stuff, like skewed things, weird buttons and all that kind of stuff, this is where it gets interesting. You know, it becomes more challenging to do things, right? So, all right, so challenge. I want to change the material. How do we do it? Anyone have an idea? First of all, are you guys with me? You guys done the split screen? Yeah. Okay. So, talk to me about the material. How would you do it? Not the color of the text, the color of the body, right? What would you do first if I want to change the color of the person's, you know, or the mannequin's body? What do I do? Where should I look? What's the first clue that you would take if you're going to do this? How about my friend Chris and Devin and all those people, the smart people over here on this side of the room, or the smart people on this side of the room, they're playing games and doing other things. How about those people? Right? I know there's no homework and there's no mark associated with this, but guys, I'm telling you, this is something you can use with your game, right? And it works with Level Up.
Can we just do this? Like, would you mean built into the script?
Good. That's literally just one of these. Yeah, you could do that. But what would you change? What are you going to change? So I've already given you some of the building blocks, right? Because if you think about it, if I go back to the player, here's the player. I've got this switch, right? On event tick, right? But I've also got a switch way up here on player controller. So I could do something like this. If player controller is 0, then do one thing. If player controller is 1, then do something else. So somewhere in here is probably a good place to do it, right? Or in the event begin play. You can do something similar in the event begin play. So after everything has been loaded and we've given everyone numbers, that's a good place to give you all the materials. Something in here. Now look at Quinn. Quinn has some materials, and Quinn has material instances. What's the difference between a material and a material instance? Anyone know? Does Steve talk about this at all with you guys? You forget? Yes?
Does the instance you can change at all times?
Well, that's interesting. That's nice, Logan. The instance is actually, if I double click onto it, so let's double click on the instance, you can see what you get. You get this, right? And on the right, you get all these parameters, right? So one thing is, you can see that there is a tint that you can add in, right? So if I change the tint to like red, it'll change the tint, right? So I know tint is something I can access, right, with the material. Okay, so that's one thing, that's a clue of what I can do. I can change the tint. There's also other things you can change here, and this is one of them. There's two materials here, right? Here's the parent. The parent material looks like this. Like it's pretty insane, right? Like insane. So we don't want to touch that, but each of these things has parameters, right? And the parameters are exposed here to create your material instance. So parameters are made in the material, and then they're exposed, and we can see them here. We'll do more material stuff today, this semester in our Game 2004 course, right? But for now, know that you have a couple of materials for Quinn. Okay, so there's this one, and there's this one. Here's the other one. So here, she's got a base color, and there's another, again, there's a tint. So let's see if that looks better. So if I tint this one, oh, now that looks, there's more there, right? So that's not bad too. So that's material, that's another material we can use. So there's two materials for Quinn, Quinn 1 and Quinn 2, right? And those are the material instances, the two material instances we want to change. Okay, so how do I get access to the materials? Think about this from a coding perspective, right? Well, we know that Quinn has a mesh. So if I have a mesh in there, can I get material? Is that possible? Is there a material that I can do, right? And by the way, there's not just one material, there's materials. There's material 0 and there's material 1, right? So that's something that we can do. We can use both of those materials, material 0 and material 1. I can get materials, if I do that, look at this. If I get materials, plural, here it is, I get an array of materials, and then I can just use a for loop to loop through each of them. So I could kind of do a for each loop. So for each material that I want to loop through for one time, I can kind of do a loop like this, right? Then, okay, I've got access to each material now. What do I get out? The array element, if I hover over, is a material interface object reference. Material interface object reference. Okay, cool. So then what I want to do is I want to, you know, let's see, can I, by the way, that's materials. So how do I change that? So how can I set a parameter? Well, there's a parameter that I can set. I can set a parameter, and so set parameters. I don't want to set parameters. I want to set parameter. Set parameter, right? I want to be able to set one parameter, not parameters, right? So that's one thing I'd like to do. I want to be able to set a parameter, right? And what could I do? What about if I only got, that's on each element, for each element. This is the array index, right? And what about if I want to get the item for the item itself? That's the array element itself, right? So if I was to do it for single, to try it out, if I said get material, right? There's get material by name. Look, get material, or get material by number. This is material 0. Once I have this, and I want to set parameters, right? Well, there's more than one parameter, right? Both of them have that same set parameters. I'm just doing it for one, as an example, right? So what is the parameter? Well, I can, you know, I want to set a parameter that goes in there. An array of audio parameter structures is not what I want. So this is for audio. All right, what else? How else can I do it? What else can I set with a material, right? Set something. Because there's a lot of different things in here, right? What I want to do, I'd love to set a material instance. Is there a way of me getting the material instance from the material? Like, can I get material instance? Can I get the instance? You know, there's got to be a way of me getting it, because this gives me a material interface object reference. Okay? Now, there's also this, get material instance, right? But this is for the wrong things. This is for user interface items. I don't want that, right? I want the material instance of my mesh. So if I type that, is there another thing I can get? Get material. So there's slot names, materials, you know. So here's my name, and then I have this, but I want to set some object. And again, if we look at the material instance itself, we kind of did this. By the way, hint, we did this exact same thing in our drone. Remember we did the drone thing? We did the exact same thing in the drone. You can look that code up right there. It's there. It's the exact same thing. What did we do for the drone? It's actually in our first semester, in our last semester. Yes?
It turned red when it aggroed you.
But how did you do it? You had to set the material instance. You had to change the team color, right? So how do we do that stuff? How do we change the team color? So, but this is where you would do it. This is your challenge, but like I said, you'd want to do it somewhere in here where you're checking to see what the player controller ID is. If it's 0 or 1. If it's 0, you make it green. If it's 1, you make it red. And that's all. Try that, please. Figure it out. You can use ChatGPT. Remember, this is not one of those classes where, you know, I'm limiting you. I'm not limiting you this semester. If you forget, go for help. Or look it up on Google. Google it. Guys, remember, this is your last semester before Rise and Level Up. You may have to look stuff up. Okay? It's okay. Who's got the answer? You should have it already. One thing that's beautiful is that Visual Studio, as well as Visual Studio Code, has GitHub Copilot built into it, right? And the beautiful thing about that is you can use use the context right from there to get anything you need. So from a coding perspective, it happens really, really quickly. But here we don't really have that yet. I think Unreal Engine, we'll see Unreal Engine 5.8 probably have some kind of AI integrated. Guaranteed. There's just too much involved. The other thing to think is, what's the prompt that I need to use? That's the other question. Prompting is really important. Again, I think there was always a question about prompt engineering. All right, it's a real thing, you know. So it's like maybe there could be a course on prompt engineering. You know, how to actually do good prompts. Maybe not for us, but for a future class or something. Who's figured it out? No one? You're not even doing it. Come on, guys, I'm going to leave in like 5 minutes. Takes 2 seconds. But I need someone, one of you, please save me and do this. One person. No? You guys figure it out? Oh, some people are checking the old code. That's good, that's good. And? places, yeah. Oh, you're gonna make me do ChatGPT with you guys. Here, this is what you do. Okay, let's do it. Here's, I'm even a guest. I'm even a guest, right? How do I change the material instance parameter in Unreal Engine 5.5.4? Very important to notice the thing. You got it done? Hey, good for you. How'd you do it?
I created a dynamic material.
Okay. Get the mesh component. Create a dynamic material instance. This is dynamically how to do it. There's code on how to do it. Create dynamic material instance. Set the scalar parameter value. Oh, set scalar parameter. Is that how we did it? Ah, see, I can see that right there. So, okay, so I just do that. So let's pull it in. Here's my mesh. Set scalar parameter of default for whatever. Value on materials, right? And here's the parameter. And then we need a parameter value if we're going to do it, like red or whatever. And we need to, on a specific material, did you just do one? Or did you just do right here like this? Or just do it on the material?
I did it on
Get.
I created an instance. And off the instance, I did set vector variable value.
Okay. So you said you got get materials. Is that what you did?
Just the one material. Like element 0 or index 0.
Get material. And then from there?
Create dynamic material instance.
Oh. You did it and once you've done this, then here we'll connect this up. Element 0, optional name, we don't care about that. And then from here, you're going to set scalar parameter value. Is that what you did? With the parameter name is, I think, is tint, if I'm not wrong, and the value will be like 255. What value did you use?
I did vector parameter, not
Set, okay, so set vector parameter value. Okay, that's fine. Set vector parameter value.
and then
And
off the
again.
value I would just do like I made it a local variable since I did it as a function.
Okay, so we're going to say parameter value is going to be tint. And what did you? But the value itself here, right? You can just choose, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to just make red. And let's try it. So this is like for, all I did was I got the mesh, and both of them are going to turn red now because I didn't specify which one. So I got the mesh, right? And I didn't check to see which one is which. So now let's see what happens, because only, look what it says here. It says,
Delete the get material and then just slide the mesh right into target.
sure. There we go, right? And let's try it out. Both red, right? So both are red, but now we don't want both of them to be red. We only want the one that is the player controller, right? So that's the one we want. So we can use the same logic, right? So if it's this, we'll make that is, if it's, we'll make the other one red. We'll make it so it's 1. If it's 1, then that's when it's red. Let's try that. So 1, red. Oh, what happened?
You didn't connect it.
Oh. Still nothing happened. True if player controller ID is, okay, let's try 0. Because that's going to work because we know it's going to be 0. Both are red. So what did you do? Both are red if it's 0.
Put the blank sheet after the create dynamic material instance.
So after this.
Yeah.
Yep. Because this will create, it doesn't matter, it's always going to be 0 no matter what, right? So we can say that here is where it's going to go. We'll connect this up. And we'll put this one up here. And now, let's see what happens if we do that. Both red. What'd you do?
On the false branch, change to like copy and paste the setback on.
Oh, on the false set parameter value.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to do the false branch, and we'll set it to green. And what's going on? What are you talking about?
It's good. I don't know what to tell you. But
Well, so one thing that's happening is it's never going to be false. Where did you put it? Did you put it in begin play or did you put it up here?
in the display ID, play ID function.
Oh, in here.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then I just used the get local player control ID.
Well, this is player controller ID right here. Player controller ID gets set, right? So that's when it gets set. Player controller ID, every single time you do it, it sets the player controller ID here, right? And that's why it would have worked for you. Here's the question. Could you have put it alongside what we already have, which is up here? Set visibility. This is true, and this is false, right? So could you not have done that? Because you already got a true false here. We're just duplicating it right here. Could you not have just done that up here? So true false, right? Because then we know we're getting true and false because these are turning invisible and not invisible, right? So is maybe event begin play too late to do it, as opposed to where you did it, which was over there. But we're able to turn. The good news is we're able to change the colors really quickly, right? But now, how do you make it so only one person has the color, not the other person? Because you did it inside of display player ID. But that's when you get this. This worked up here, right? Because we're able to switch between the two, right? So we could do a sequence.
Try setting the material, or the source material.
The which one?
Like on the create dynamic material instance. You see how it says select asset?
Yeah.
Try selecting that.
Oh, you didn't do that?
I did that.
Manny. There we go. All right. But that, we already know it works because it did that already, so that's not going to be it. It's not that. It's because it's always going to be true for both, right? Because of this. Because player controller ID is going to be 0 no matter what. And this at this time, right? That you're testing. Because in here, inside of display material, what's happening is we're getting the controller and setting it, right? And it's too late. It's too late after this. Once we've set the controller ID, it's over, kind of thing, right? So we could add it. You probably added it here to the sequence node or something, right? Yeah. And the reason why this works here and not where we did it is because it's too late. It's too late where we did it. If you do it in here, if I go back to the event graph and just grab all this, just the way it is, right? And go back into player ID and dump it in here. So now this is different because player controller ID is here already. We already have the player controller ID. It's right here and here. We're just testing for if it's one or the other. Let's see if this works any different. It's exactly the same code, just in the wrong. The other thing was in the wrong spot, right? And what about if I want to do it for each material, right? Because this is only for a dynamic material instance for only this material. So you can do it for the other one too. So why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this because it seems easy, but it's multiplayer. And what I said to you guys in the beginning, first thing that I said when I looked at the description is, please be patient. Multiplayer is more challenging than you think. You think it's going to work out nice, and then when you try something that should work, it doesn't. And the reason for this is because you're keeping track of there's a lot of balls in the air, so to speak. You're kind of keeping track of a lot of variables altogether. All right, guys, that's it for me this week for multiplayer game design 1. Tomorrow we do AI won, and be prepared for a different experience for it with AI. We'll do more theory tomorrow. Next week is where the real work starts, but tomorrow is a very different day. Thank you.